this will all be available to everyone. All right, so now I'd like to introduce Battalion Chief Stephen Hardesty. He's going to be giving us our quarterly hazardous materials spill report.
Good evening, everyone. During this last quarter, DFRS responded to 10 incidents that involved chemical or fuel spills during that period. 3 of those incidents involved diesel fuel being released from large trucks involved in accidents. During those accidents, 76 gallons of fuel leaked into the environment. DFRS was able to arrive on the scene and prevent an additional 177 gallons of fuel from getting into the environment after we arrived. We had one additional call for a pickup truck that was leaking gasoline. When units arrived on the scene, they found 3 gallons of gas had already leaked into the gutter. They were able to take some preventative measures, and we prevented an additional 26 gallons from leaking into the environment. Back in June, we handled a 350-gallon propane tank that was leaking at a restaurant in Ellicott City. With the assistance of MDE, we were able to hook up a flaring device and burn off the propane from the leaking cylinder. We assisted Howard County Police with an illicit laboratory that was located in a house in Columbia. We identified, overpacked, and separated several different chemicals that were found in the home over a 3-day period. That work is ongoing with the county, state, and other agencies, including the property owner. DFRS handled 4 incidents involving lithium-ion batteries during that time period. 2 of them involved fire scenarios where overcharged batteries caught on fire and set adjacent batteries on fire also. So that's all we have for this one, and I'll be listening in for the rest of the program.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Chief Hardesty? All right, I'm not hearing anything or seeing anything in the chat, so we'll move on. So now I'll be diving into the topic of extreme heat and how it affects the county and how you can prepare as residents to weather this extreme heat now and also in the future. And then Avery Farrell from the Office of Community Sustainability is going to dive more into the overall climate change, what the county is doing, and also some resources that are available to you. So first, I just wanted to kind of give you all some extreme heat facts and kind of give you some context. So here is our definition that we're going to be using for extreme heat. We have a period of high heat and humidity with temperatures above 90 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 2 to 3 days. And historically, Howard County has experienced 24 days above 90 degrees per year, but projections show that by 2050, we're going to be experiencing 66 days a year above 90 degrees. And so we can, reasonably expect that, with current trends, we're going to continue to be going through this kind of heat, and we need to be prepared for it. Because not only, is heat uncomfortable, but it actually puts strain on your body's organs. It disrupts your sleep, causes headaches. Sweating, it can lead to losing your bodily fluids and salt, and can lead to an imbalance that makes you more susceptible to heat-related illnesses, which I'll jump into here in a little bit. But if your blood pressure also drops when you're exposed to this kind of heat, and this can increase your risk of heart attack, especially if you have underlying health issues. So here's another kind of example of how we've seen temperatures increase over the past few years. So in this table, you can see the maximum, average, and minimum temperatures in Howard County for the month of July, starting in 1895 through this year. So the maximum is in red, and the average is in black in the middle, and then in the minimum is in the blue. As you can see, all three lines are trending slightly upward, especially just in the past 10 years. It's pretty crazy to think that, just 100 years ago, I say just 100 years, but 100 years ago, the average temperature in July here was about 73 degrees with highs of about 83 degrees, which just sounds beautiful, especially right now. So how does heat affect different parts of Howard County? So this map shows heat severity, which is a value from 2021, and it shows the areas experiencing severe heat and you can see those are highlighted in red. The more urban areas of the county, obviously, such as East Columbia, Elk Ridge, North Laurel, and Ellicott City, are going to be affected more due to the urban heat island effect, where the combination of less green areas, more buildings, more concrete, increases the heat and overall heat that's being felt in those areas. Another layer of this map to be seen is FEMA's Community Resilience Challenge Index. So this index shows us which parts of the county are better equipped to bounce back from disasters and which parts are going to need a little more assistance in recovering. So the areas that are having a harder time recovering after a natural disaster are the areas highlighted in darker blue, and the lighter yellow and green areas are those areas that don't have as many challenges to resilience. So this index, it considers things like, does the household have a vehicle, the income level, access to internet, access to smartphones. So as you can see, the areas around Ellicott City, East Columbia, North Laurel, they're going to be darker blue and they also have higher heat. And so those areas are going to need more attention when it comes to extreme heat. Finally, this map also shows county-owned facilities that function as cooling centers. These are the purple dots on the map. Right now, you can see that they're placed fairly well to serve the areas that are experiencing severe heat. But this is something that we're looking into. Avery will dive more into this topic later about how we're wanting to make sure that we're addressing the county's needs. All right, so now that we've covered where extreme heat occurs in the county, let's talk about what this heat causes in the human body. So like I talked about earlier, extreme heat causes your blood vessels to open to help release that heat from your body at the surface. And this leads to lower blood pressure, forcing your heart to work harder to regulate your body's temperature. And this happens no matter how healthy you are. It's just heat puts stress on the body. You're losing those fluids, you're losing electrolytes. So if you don't take precautions to help your heart and help your body regulate its temperature, one of the things you can experience is heat exhaustion. So heat exhaustion is kind of like, when you see your engine light come on your car, your car might not necessarily be broken down just yet, but it's a warning sign that you need to take action. So the symptoms, as you can see here, we've got headache, nausea, dizziness, weakness, irritability, heavy sweating, and of course, elevated body temperature. So during hot days, you're going to want to always be paying attention to not only yourself, but also the loved ones around you, as older adults and younger children are going to be more susceptible to heat-related illnesses, or people with underlying health issues. So there are even medications that can hurt your body or hinder your body's ability to regulate its temperature. And so we just all need to make sure we're keeping an eye on each other. So if you find yourself suffering from any of these symptoms, you're going to want to move to a cool place, lie down, and maybe raise your feet slightly, drink plenty of water, and then you could try cooling your skin by spraying cold water on yourself or using some cooling packs around your armpits and neck. So if you have heat exhaustion and you don't address it, it can escalate into heat stroke. So heat stroke is a life-threatening condition and you need to get help immediately for this. The big signs of heat stroke here are going to be confusion, And also like slurred speech, maybe the person who's experienced it isn't sure, like they're just behaving differently. And also another big sign is that they're not sweating as much and that their skin is more hot or dry. So at this point, you need to call 911 and get that person to the hospital immediately. And if you're having to call 911 for someone and you're waiting on the ambulance to arrive, you're going to want to move that person to a cool shaded area, remove the outer layer of clothing, get some ice packs, and also elevate the person's feet. But this is a very, very serious condition, and you need, like I said earlier, you need to make sure you call 911 or seek help immediately. So now we've talked about the bad things that can happen. How can you prepare for heat events now and also in the future? So you can start, as soon as you see heat coming in the forecast, you really need to like elevate the amount of water that you're drinking. So 16 to 32 ounces of water every hour, and even more if you're being active. If you're working outside or playing outdoors, every 20 minutes, try to sip some water, even if you're not thirsty. And of course, always apply sunscreen of at least SPF 15 and apply it as often as the bottle says to. In general, you're going to want to avoid, if you can, going outside between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. And if you do have to go outside, stay shaded. Also, like wear clothing that's light colored and is also lightweight. Wear your hat, wear your sunglasses, and some things that you can do to prepare your home for this kind of heat, is to make sure that your windows are covered with some thick drapes or shades, making sure you're weather stripping your doors and your windows, using fans to circulate air in your home, adding insulation to your home. And also, if you have the means, consider going through your power company to have an energy audit done of your home, especially if you're looking to prepare, your house in the long run. Doing an energy audit can help you figure out how to improve your home's defenses um, against, keeping all of your cool air in your house. I'm dealing with this right now. I need to have some insulation added in my attic, and we went through an energy audit with our power company, and it's been a really helpful process to understand what all we need to have done to our home. All right, so what can you do during the heat event? And I kind of touched on a lot of this already. But it's really important to, like I said, drink water, but you're going to want to avoid drinking ice cold water because that can be a shock to your body. And it's also easier to drink more water if it's at room temperature. You're going to want to avoid alcohol, caffeine, and overly sweetened beverages. Um, and like I said, wear that light colored, loose fitting clothing, taking frequent breaks outside. Another important part is that, you have to be careful when you're relying on fans. So if your power goes out at home and it's going to be out for a while, you're going to want to be really careful when it comes to relying on just fans on cooling your home, because fans can help you feel cooler, but they're not necessarily going to help you fully regulate your body's temperature. So for some individuals, depending on their health status, 97 degrees Fahrenheit is where fans are no longer effective. And so you really need to keep an eye on yourself and your loved ones if you're in the situation where you're having to rely on fans. You're also going to want to avoid, hot meals, hot showers, and keep your bedroom as cool as possible. That's another thing that, like I said earlier, heat can disturb your sleep. So you're going to want to use thin sheets, keep your windows covered, and try not to adjust your sleeping schedule, because sometimes heat can make you maybe want to take naps during the day more than usual. And that's another thing to look out for. All right, so if you don't have cooling at home, here are some resources for you. So if you're experiencing a short-term outage, you can visit the Howard County Cooling Centers, which include community centers 50 plus centers and libraries. You can visit these anytime during regular business hours. And if those hours are going to be extended, like for example, it's a holiday where some of these might be closed, and there's an extreme heat event, yeah, if the hours are going to be extended, it's going to be announced on social media. So keep an eye on Howard County government's main social media page. Um, let's see. And if you're worried that you're not going to be able to afford your energy bill or your power was shut off due to an inability to pay, you can also utilize the county's Community Action Council's Energy Assistance Program. So they can help you avoid getting your power shut off. They can help you get it turned back on. They can help you with weatherization of your home, so that like weather stripping and other options like that to help your home keep that cool air in. And there's also, various different programs that they offer to help with like housing assistance, food assistance, and early childhood education. But there's also the state's Department of Human Services. They also offer some help for utilities. So now that we've discussed how heat affects the county, how it can affect your body, and some things that you can do to prepare, now I'll talk about the different kinds of heat alerts that you're going to see from the National Weather Service on the news or through your weather apps. So as we go through these, keep in mind that if you're in different areas of the country, these alerts might apply to different temperatures, but these are the ones for the Maryland, Baltimore area. So first we have excessive heat watch. So this alert is meant to get you aware and paying attention. You might be starting to think of the plans you have for the next couple of days, and whether you need to adjust those plans. So what this means is that, the potential for your heat index value, which the heat index is not necessarily the exact temperature, but it's what it feels like outside. So it's the temperature combined with with humidity. And so it's going to feel like in the next 24 to 48 hours, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, or it could possibly exceed that. So the National Weather Service wants you to be prepared. The next level is going to be a heat advisory. So when this comes out, you need to really start taking precautions to avoid heat illness. So this means that within the next 12 to 24 hours, that heat index is going to reach 105 to 109 degrees. And when we say, take precautions, we meant what I was talking about earlier, drinking some extra water, avoiding being outside, wearing your sunscreen, wearing your light colored, light weight clothing, closing your blinds at home, conserving your energy. And then excessive heat warning. This means within the next 12 hours, that heat index is going to be 110 degrees or higher. So you really do want to be taking precautions at this point. Keeping an eye on the weather, keeping an eye on your neighbors, on your friends, on your family, and just making sure that everyone is good to go. And also, in situations like this, you might expect, the demand for water in your area to go up, and this could possibly, lead to other things like maybe a decrease in water pressure, more stress on the electrical grid. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a heat plan in place. So if you run out of power or your power gets shut off, do you have somewhere to go? Stay with a friend or go to the cooling centers or get a hotel. You're going to want to have these things planned out. All right, so that is all that I have for y'all today. Do y'all have any questions so far? All right, I'm not hearing or seeing anything, so I will hand it over to Avery. And Avery, just let me know when you want me to like go from slide to slide.
All right. Sounds good. Okay, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So I have prepared myself for this talk, and I have a hotspot ready just in case if my Wi-Fi goes out, because as soon as I start talking, it'll go out, no doubt. If I notice that, give me like 45 seconds, and I hope to reconnect. Anyway, so I'm Avery Farrell. I work at Howard County's Office of Community Sustainability. I kind of have two roles there. I was initially hired to help nonprofits install stormwater treatment practices on their properties. But I had started before I actually got hired. So I was an intern and I helped develop the Climate Action Plan. So we will look into, we're going to zoom out with this presentation from a personal preparedness level to more like county preparedness and how we can prepare our county, reduce the impacts of heat, and increase resiliency. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so temperatures have been increasing, and this graph, okay, so it looks insignificant. I was always confused by an increase in 1 degree. Like, how is that changing all of these climate patterns and stuff? But it is 1 degree is very significant. It is completely changing our Earth systems. Yeah, so since like 1980, it has skyrocketed fairly high. So yeah, you can go on to the next slide. Okay, so as a result of climate change, extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and intense. They're showing long-term trends of increasing temperatures, and also climate change is outpacing our current infrastructure, our current health, our current bodies, and our natural systems in Howard County. So we're going to see more of these heat domes and heat waves and extreme heat days. You can go to next slide. Okay, so now we're going to get into our climate action plan and what's kind of come out of our climate action plan. We're going to look more closely at the local heat impacts, heat vulnerabilities, and our heat vulnerability mapping, and then strategies that we've developed to increase resiliency of our environment, human and our natural environment, human environment, and built environment, to reduce the impacts of extreme heat. You can go ahead. Okay, so Lauren kind of told us some statistics earlier. I really like this visual. It really gives you a good picture of what our summer is going to look like. So from 1986 to 2005, you can see that there were 6 days above 95 degrees and about 25 days above 90 degrees. And by the end of century, there's going to be 9 days above 105 degrees and 107 days above 90 degrees. So that doesn't look very comfortable. And honestly, we published the Climate Action Plan last year, and this summer already feels like the end of century to me. But yeah, so anyway, so we have to make sure that we are preparing all of our systems to be able to adapt to this increase in temperature to make at least our summers a little bit enjoyable and be able to go outside and enjoy recreational activities or be able to work outside and all of that. You can go ahead to the next slide. All right, so some of the direct impacts of extreme heat on the environment. Land, water, air temperature increases. There's heat stress on plants and animals. There's plant and animal death, and it just disrupts general ecosystem services. The impacts on humans. which Lauren talked about a little bit. Heat-related illnesses, vector-borne diseases as animal species that carry vector diseases move north, try to chase the cooler weather, and mental health and physical health declination as people are restricted by or feel restricted in how long they can stay outside for. It's not good for the health, not good. And then also death. And then on the built environment, materials can overheat. There can be brownouts, roadways and railways buckle, and also the heat island effect. And these are all the direct impacts. And next slide. And then all of these indirect impacts, and I really think this shows how all of these systems overlap. So once one system is impacted, the rest become vulnerable. So this is why it's so important to make sure that these systems are as strong as they can be moving forward into the future. So we're going to see more people with more allergies, more environmental degradation. We could run into food and water insecurity, invasive species, cost of heating and cooling in buildings, and electricity bills and utilities in general, species migration, and rolling brownouts. And you can go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so as part of our Climate Action Plan preliminary vulnerability mapping, we mapped heat vulnerability, and this was using data from a hot day and probably like, I forgot what year, but it was a hot day a couple years ago, and then also the BMC's Vulnerable Populations Index. And this shows where heat overlaps with, or where underserved or overburdened communities are. And these temperatures are across Howard County are not uniform. Areas with more buildings, infrastructure, impervious surfaces, and lack of shade cover have higher heat vulnerability, and underserved or under-resourced populations have higher heat vulnerability as well, which is that relationship you can see highlighted there. And then the map on the bottom is tree canopy mapping. So you can't really tell from this, but if you zoomed in where that red is, there's a lot of open space right there, most likely because of that built infrastructure in eastern Howard County, southeast Howard County. Go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so these are some of the strategies that we developed, and these are sprinkled out throughout the Climate Action Plan resiliency actions. So there is one resiliency action that's targeted at reducing heat islands and increasing shade structures, but the rest of them are sprinkled into other categories, like just strengthening infrastructure in general to the impacts of climate change, like including flooding and severe storms. And so here are some that I pulled out from our Climate Action Plan, which is enhance emergency preparedness for extreme heat events, direct resources to underserved and under-resourced communities, reduce heat islands and increase shade structures, which is, and harden buildings, roads, and other infrastructures against heat, and tree plantings and strengthen ecosystem services. You go to the next page. Okay, so first we're going to look at the heat resiliency strategies for the environment right now. So in our Climate Action Plan, we have increased the native shade tree and shrub plantings, utilizing drought and heat tolerant plants. I listed 2 examples there, common milkweed and spotted bee balm. Promote tree and shrub programs to encourage plantings on private properties, and strategically plant in those heat vulnerable areas that we were seeing below. One of our interns from the Chesapeake Climate Core program, planted a meadow at Belmont Manor using native heat tolerant plants. So that was earlier, that was maybe like 2 months ago. So we'll see how that goes. But these are the kind of, we have to adjust the way we plant to make sure that these plants are surviving in the future. But the really important thing too is maintenance. Maintenance is super, super important. And a lot of times people won't water every day or whatnot. It's a lot of like resources that need to be used. So we have to also really think about conserving these resources and making sure that these plants are as resilient as possible. So we completed some annual tree giveaways. So we have a Trees for Bees program that runs out of our office, and then Rec and Parks fall tree giveaway program. We funded we planted 300 street trees funded through the 2023 CBT Urban Tree Grant Program, and there's that meadow that I showed you. You can go to the next slide. Okay, and these are heat resiliency strategies for the built environment, which is increase installments of shade structures, surface cooling technologies, and solar canopies, promote weatherization programs, rebate programs, and grant programs to improve home comfort, energy efficiency, and adequate cooling systems. Lauren mentioned the Community Action Council and their resources, and then expand recruitment and training for technicians to support HVAC, microgrids, and emergency generators. And we're seeking grants to support energy efficiency, grid resiliency, and workforce development. In the picture of the solar canopy is a future project going to happen at the East Columbia Library. OCS partnered with Community Action Council to promote various energy assistance programs. And there were parking lot solar canopies installed at the Little Patuxent wastewater treatment plant a few years ago. You can go to the next slide. Okay, and then our community strategies are implement resiliency hubs, which I'll go into a little bit in the next slide, but implement resiliency hubs to enhance residents' ability to prepare for, adapt to, and recover from climate-related hazards, improve communication, outreach, and education of extreme heat and other climate-related hazards, conduct targeted outreach to underserved, overburdened, and heat-vulnerable areas, and increase awareness of and accessibility to resources and services that strengthen community resilience. So we recently received, or we're in the process of receiving, grant funding to do a resiliency hub study at the North Laurel Community Center and the Gary Arthur Community Center. We conducted a community engagement survey, and this was to help identify gaps in Howard County's overall communications accessibility, and also to get a gauge on how people feel about their health, well-being, and environment. You can go ahead to the next slide. And then this is a little dive into the resiliency hubs. So we are looking at existing community centers. The resiliency hubs are supposed to be a gathering space that can be used under 3 different operations or scenarios. One is just the daily operations, so those community centers, programs and services, the regular programs and services. And then on top of that, we would also make sure that these resiliency hubs are stocked with all relevant information, whether somebody needs information on housing or employment or anything to help maintain somebody's well-being here and prepare in case a disaster were to hit in the future. So so these hubs would be powered by solar and battery storage, And the reason for that is pairing the solar, well, on top of the greenhouse gas benefits, pairing the solar with battery will help mitigate prolonged power outages. So during a power outage, the battery can operate the community center, and the community center can continue, whether it's distributing resources during an emergency or providing heating and cooling, device charging, and other services during emergencies. And then these resiliency hubs also incorporate green infrastructure and nature-based solutions into landscaping, incorporates energy efficiency and other resilient features of the building design, and provides, it's supposed to be really like a distribution hub, and really help people get access to resources and services within the county, and be able to have this reliable place to go to during whatever blue sky emergencies or after an emergency. And next slide. I think that's the last. Okay. That's it. Thank you guys. If you guys have questions, you can ask me or shoot me an email.
All right. Any questions for myself or for Avery? Feel free to come off mute, or you can put it in the chat. I also have our emails up here if you want to, like Avery said, shoot us an email with any questions or concerns you might have. All right. I'm not seeing or hearing anything. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for coming, Nancy. So that concludes our meeting for today, unless anybody else has other questions. But like I said earlier, please send us some emails if you have any other questions. I'll be posting these slides and also a recording of the meeting next week on our website. In addition, if you have any requests for topics that we can cover related to emergency preparedness, please email me. I'd love to hear what y'all want to learn about, and if you have any specific concerns about what's happening in the county, please let me know. I want to make these meetings as useful as I can for all of you. But if nobody has any other questions, then I'll go ahead and conclude our meeting for today, and I will see you all at our next meeting in October. Bye, everyone.